This video was sponsored by Envato Elements. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a while since I've done this, but today I'm rating your Photoshop edits once again. I'll be giving you some tips and tricks along the way and just kind of show you what I think could make them even better. So honestly, let's not waste any time and get straight into the first one. I really like the kind of half-half composition in this first one. Looks nice. I also love the really vibrant teal colors. One thing does bother me a little bit, and that is a perspective error. The lightning comes from that cloud over there, but the cloud is actually much further away than the guy it hits. Yet the thickness of the lightning is consistent, which technically isn't realistic. There's two things you could do instead. Either that lightning comes closer as it comes towards our guy, which I think looks a bit weird in this particular example I made, don't mind that. But the better way I think is just making sure the lightning doesn't come from that particular cloud, but instead higher up outside of the frame like this, which might be better, or at least more realistic in this case. So that's what I would do. But other than that, I do like it. So well done. I'll give this 3.5 pixels. Next, this might actually be one of my favorites today. I love the composition. This is totally something I would make as well. The split tone with a very vibrant orange and the intense blue works just beautifully. However, one tiny thing I notice is the contrast on the actual hourglass. Down below, the contrast is actually spot on. However, up top, you're somehow losing that, which doesn't make a ton of sense because it is still the exact same distance from the camera there. Instead, it should look something more like this, which I think fixes pretty much the whole thing instantly. Also, another tiny thing I noticed is down below, the reflection in the water is a different color than the sky, which the reflection is from the sky. I think it should look something more like this. It's a very small nitpick, but I do think it just a little bit more realistic. I also painted a tiny orange highlight on the bottom there, but that's just a choice thing, I guess. Nice work though. I absolutely love this. Crazy work. This next one has very realistic colors, I must say. This looks, almost real if you look at it fast. However, once again, it's the lighting where a tiny error occurs. You can see there are some very subtle light rays coming from the left, but there isn't really much light bouncing off of those guys on the left. You really want to make sure the lighting of the environment translates onto your subjects. In this case, I think something like this might be a bit better. It's a bit of a poor execution, but you get what I mean. So yeah, but other than that, I really like it. You can tell you put some effort into this as well. This is the original photo. I'm giving this 3.5 pixels. This next one I chose for a bit of a different reason this time around. That's more of a contrast issue with distance. That makes no sense, but let me explain. The deer in the front is actually pretty decent, but the other two, you can tell, especially by the background, it kind of gives it away. The contrast in the buildings on the same distance as the deer in the back, for example, is very low. You're losing a ton of details because of the hazy, misty type of vibe. Basically, you want to make sure it looks a little bit more like this, where you're losing some of that contrast. They're maybe a tiny bit darker as well. An easy trick to find out how contrasty your items have to be in an existing landscape is just looking at the distance point in your landscape, because usually it kind of gives it away. Like here, you can just tell. So that might be a very useful thing for you to think about. Anyway, I do like it. Let's say 2.5 pixels. Next, I really like this composition. Once again, it is a centered composition, which is one of my favorite things to do. It's basic, but it works every single time. Tiny thing though, you painted the light on her pretty much correctly. It comes from the brightest light source in the image. However, the moon, or planet, whatever it is lit from the complete opposite side, which, you know, I suggest putting it in the center and having it be lit from the other side, like so, to kind of fix that error, because then it's a very nice picture. I really like it. You can tell you know what you're doing. 4 pixels. Guys, this is actually kind of fun. I've missed this. Next, we have a poster design for Obi-Wan Kenobi. This is a bit of an artistic one, of course, because the sky would not look like that in real life, but that's all right. One thing I would personally change is the landscape behind Obi-Wan. It's pretty contrasty, which I think might benefit from some haze, like this. It's very poorly executed, but it's kind of the idea that it gives. It adds some depth, it adds some cinematicness in a way, but most of all, Obi-Wan himself stands out more this way as well. So that's what I would do. However, I really like the composition and the concept of this. The light from above looks pretty cool. So final 4 pixels. Now this next one at first I thought looked just incredible. It's really cool, really fun. However, when I took a closer look, I did notice that you're missing some shadows, and particularly ambient shadows, which are shadows that are basically the touching shadows, which are usually really dark. I kind of tried adding what I mean here, and you can just tell instantly, your brain tells you, oh yeah, that looks more realistic somehow. Learning how to add correct shadows is very difficult. It's very difficult to teach as well, so unfortunately there's not much I can say or do or tell you to help. But a thing to keep in mind, I guess, is if an object is touching another one very close up, or it like actual touching, the shadow underneath is going to be black, just absolute pitch black, super dark, and then it fades out into, you know, so that's, I guess, something to take away from this. I love this image though, definitely 4 pixels.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Gary, broadcasting all the way from Alaska. Do you hear this music? Epic, isn't it? That's because it's from Envato Elements. And look at this epic text. I made that with Envato Elements in just 3 seconds. And all of this, Envato Elements. And so is this. And that. If you want to make videos, I highly suggest you check it out. Or if you want to edit photos or do graphic design, it's all there. I mean, look at all these bloody templates. Look at them. And these brushes, guys. And crikey, look at all these. I think you get the idea. For just $16 a month, you've got yourself an annual subscription. Link down below. Now, let's get back to the bloody video.
Now this one I picked simply because of the insane blending and editing. I don't have anything to nitpick on this because it is simply incredible. Let me show you why. This is the original picture. I know. The lighting is incredibly convincing in the final image. For example, the really subtle light on his face, on his nose, the cigarette that's only half lit because it's being blocked by his nose and his hat. That is incredible. The glowing ears look really cool as well. It's a nice, vibrant little glow. This is just fantastic. One tiny thing that I'm noticing now that bothers me a little bit is he's not centered. The text is, he's not. Put him a little bit to the left, but other than that, I love this. This is fantastic. 5 pixels. It has to be 5 pixels. Moving on. Once again, this is a bit of a contrast issue. It's a very quick fix. You can tell in the horse, again, it gives it away. Basically, the darkest area on the horse is what you want to be the darkest area in the foreground. For example, the grass here. It should look like this, more. Kind of. The grass underneath the horse is the exact same distance level as the horse itself. So you want to make sure the contrast on those two matches as well. It's pretty straightforward, actually. It's a very simple, dreamy image. I do love the lighting. The rim light looks very convincing. So I'm definitely going to give this 3.5 pixels nonetheless, because you can tell the blending is just pretty decent. Now this one, it's a very particular style, and I'm not going to comment too much on that style. However, one thing a tip, I guess, but this might be a preference thing. The lights are very yellowish with a reddish orange glow around it, which usually doesn't look too great in my opinion. It makes it look very cartoony and a bit amateur. I tried fixing it, but you can't, because once it's done like this, it's very difficult to actually go back and change it. However, I hope I can kind of show you with some examples what I mean. But this is a preference thing. Some people just really like super intense colored lights. I personally don't. I like it a bit dimmer, unless it's really vibrant colors like green and blue and red. Might be me. Still, very cool image. Lots of stuff going on. 3.5 pixels. This next one is a concept you see quite often. It's nice. It works. It works. That's why people do it. I do think for this particular one, it might be good to have the core of the light be inside of the turtle instead of above. Basically in the center of his body, like so, which makes him look like the light source. Right now, it looks like the water is being lit from an external light source somewhere else, which obviously is nowhere to be found in the rest of the image. So that's what I would do. But then also I would increase the light in the background a little bit, so you can have some very subtle highlights on his shell and his body as well, to create just a little bit more of a dynamic situation lighting wise. Might be just me actually, because it does look nice. It's a very simple image. It's pretty dark, but still overall pretty good work. I will give this 3 pixels. On to the next one. This image, once again, I chose because it simply looks wondrous. It looks fantastic. This was made by 2 people, actually in collaboration, which is cool. The composition is beautiful. It's kind of centered, but it has some diagonal stuff going on as well. The dragon is nice and glowy. It wraps around the tree very nicely. What can I say? This is great work. You guys obviously know what you're doing. And yeah, this would actually be great on someone's wall. I'm not gonna lie. This is a great wall print kind of thing. So, well done. 5 pixels. Look at this. This is fantastic. This next one I found very interesting because in my opinion, if I made this, I would say this is about halfway into making the final edit. All the elements are in, however, some of the blending is still missing. The basic shadows are there, the ambient shadows are there, however, some of the glows are, I would just say this could use some post-processing, if you will. And here's some stuff that I did I think might make it look a bit better. First of all, I made the skull a little bit more purple-ish to match the surrounding areas. I also added some slight shadowing to kind of add some depth to the skull, but most importantly, I added a ton of glow. Like this. As you know, a solid color with the blend mode linear dodge add creates this really nice vibrant glows, especially if you add multiple layers of them. That's what I did here as well. It makes it come alive, as you can see. I think this is a lot better, but I mean, the base was really nice. I love this concept. It's very chaotic, which is why I chose it as well. 3.5 pixels. This one stood out to me because I used to make this kind of stuff all the time back when like before YouTube. Post-apocalyptic stuff is just always so much fun. I think this is a great image, but one thing I am missing, it feels very two-dimensional. And a very easy fix, this most basic thing ever, simply add more buildings in the back. And also make sure there's some depth in terms of haziness and mist. As you can tell, these look like they're further away because they're less contrasty. But you can tell, this makes it look more dynamic, more... You know what I mean? I don't. I mean, the original image is pretty dope as well, I'm not gonna lie. Definitely 4 pixels. It's very cohesive. Next, we've got Rocket in the opening of a spaceship or something. It's a pretty simplistic image. I do like it. However, there's one tiny thing I would like to point out. He is standing against a very bright light source, meaning you're getting a ton of backlight. And backlight usually means the subject's gonna be really dark. The light is being blocked, and so it's gonna look something like this, I guess. But then also, usually cameras pick light like this up like a very glowy, hazy, you know, substance. What? Let me just show you what I mean. Like this. There's just a ton of haze and glare, and in gaming I think you call this light bloom. Basically the light is just so bright you're gonna have some light fall off on the sides and some glare, which makes it look more realistic, I think, in this case. Speaking is difficult today, what the hell? Anyway, I do like it, also because it's a centered composition. I'm a simp for central... I'm quitting. I'm quitting YouTube. Next, ladies and gentlemen, this is a poster for Godzilla x Kong. And this is beyond my expertise because you can tell this is a lot of painted stuff. It looks great. One thing I noticed, however, it is dark. It's a very dark image, and this is most notable when you put it up next to other posters. It's not gonna stand out, and it doesn't need to pop as much as promotional material. However, I do think it can benefit from some brightening like so, just so it's a little bit more, you know, in your face. A little bit more. However, the composition, it is gorgeous, it's beautiful, the haziness, the lighting. I am loving this, so I'm still gonna give this 4.5 pixels. Next, this is looking really nice, good colors, it's really cinematic in a way. However, I am seeing a bunch of those rim lights that are just lines, thin, tiny lines, and the light is coming from 2 sides, meaning it should look like this. You have to remember, guys, light isn't always just rim lights. If it comes from the back, sure, you're gonna have rim lights, but there's actual surfaces that are gonna be lit as well. For example, in this case, his cheeks, some parts of his hat, his hands. That stuff you wanna make sure is lit if you're gonna have light sources like this on 2 sides. You'll also find it just looks a bit more dynamic like that. It's still a very cool image though. I'm gonna give this 3.5 pixels. This image is very artistic. It's a very particular style, which again, I'm not gonna comment on. However, one tiny thing I did notice is another perspective error in this case. The underwater section is a completely different angle than the above water section. And so I tried something myself. It looks like absolute dog water, but you do get a sense of what I mean, where you're looking more on top of the landscape instead of seeing all the way through it, because you wouldn't, because you're, you know, the camera angle doesn't allow for that. In general, I would say one of these halfway underwater shots wouldn't work in this case, because as you can tell on the landscape above, the camera is just too high up. So this isn't really realistic, but if you were to do this, it would look something like this, I guess. I mean, if you're behind glass, then this would be possible, but I don't think that's what you were going for here. It is a very nice and dreamy image. I mean, I like the idea. So 3 pixels. This image is dope. I love this. It's intense, it's glowy, it's neon, very good. Just a very fun thing I think could make this look nicer even, is a reflection on the ground of that circular shape. The ground in the distance definitely looks a bit wet already, so this might help to make it look even more realistic. Also, it's not centered. It's slightly too far towards the right, which actually is now starting to bother me a lot. Why did you do that? All jokes aside, looks nice. 3.5 pixels. The last one for today, and I found this so interesting. When I first saw this, I kind of thought that this was like 2 images on one screen, because the shadow on the foot of the mountain is so dark and the top of the flag is kind of on the same horizontal line. It almost makes it look like it's being cut off by the mountain. A very easy fix would be simply to make that foreground bit a little bit bigger so it overlaps with the mountain, but then also that shadow does not need to be so dark. As you can tell in my own version, this looks just a bit more natural. The shadow doesn't need to be super duper dark for this to work. And this instantly makes it look like the flag is in front of that mountain, making it a whole image again. So that's what you could do next time, potentially, maybe. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that is it for today in terms of the edits I chose. I must say, it's kind of fun to do this again. It's been a good while. I'm pretty sure it's more than a year ago I did this last. And it's always kind of fun to just nitpick stuff you guys make and completely burn you to the ground. I mean, give you insight in what could make your edits better. Don't forget to check out Envato Elements, the sponsor of today's video. I love it, as you know, so link down below. All jokes aside, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, hit the bell not to miss a single future video, and then I hope I'll see you in the next one.